Book 17. Stranger at the Gates. When young dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, Telemachus strapped his rawhide sandals to his feet, and the young prince, the son of King Odysseus, picked up the rugged spear that fit his grip, and striking out for the city, told his swineherd, "I'm off to town, old friend, to present myself to mother. She'll never stop her bitter tears of mourning, well I know, till she sees me face to face. And for you I have some orders. Take this luckless stranger to town, so he can beg his supper there, and whoever wants can give the man some crumbs and a cup to drink. How can I put up with every passerby? My mind's weighed down with troubles. If the stranger resents it, all the worse for him. I like to tell the truth and tell it plainly." "My friend," subtle Odysseus broke in, "I've no desire myself to linger here. Better that beggars cadge their meals in town than in the fields. Some willing soul will see to my needs. I'm hardly fit at my age to keep to a farm and jump to a foreman's every order. Go on then. This man will take me, as you've told him. Once I'm warm from the fire and the sun's good and strong, look at the clothing on my back, all rags and tatters. I'm afraid the frost at dawn could do me in. And town, you say, is a long, hard way from here." At that, Telemachus strode down through the farm in quick, firm strides, rooting death for the suitors. Once he reached his well-constructed palace, propping his spear against a sturdy pillar and crossing the stone threshold, in he went. His old nurse was the first to see him, Eurycleia, just spreading fleeces over the carved inlaid chairs. Tears sprang to her eyes. She rushed straight to the prince, as the other maids of great Odysseus flocked around him, hugged him warmly, kissed his head and shoulders. Now down from her chamber came discreet Penelope, looking for all the world like Artemis or golden Aphrodite, bursting into tears as she flung her arms around her darling son, and kissed his face and kissed his shining eyes and sobbed, "You're home, Telemachus." Words flew from her heart, sweet light of my eyes. I never thought I'd see you again, once you shipped to Pylos, against my will, so secret, out for news of your dear father. Quick, tell me, did you catch sight of the man? Meet him? What? "Please, mother," steady Telemachus replied. "Don't move me to tears. Don't stir the heart inside me. I've just escaped from death, sudden death. No, bathe now, put on some fresh clothes. Go up in your own room with your serving women, pray, and promise the gods a generous sacrifice to bring success, if Zeus will ever grant us the hour of our revenge. I myself am off to the meeting grounds to summon up a guest who came with me from abroad when I sailed home. I sent him on ahead with my trusted crew. I told Piraeus to take him into his house, treat him well, host him with all goodwill till I could come myself." Words to the mark that left his mother silent. She bathed now, put on some fresh clothes, prayed, and promised the gods a generous sacrifice to bring success, if Zeus would ever grant the hour of their revenge. Spear in hand, Telemachus strode on through the hall and out, and a pair of sleek hounds went trotting at his heels. And Athena lavished a marvelous splendor on the prince, so the people all gazed in wonder as he came forward. The swaggering suitors clustered, milling around him, welcome words on their lips and murder in their hearts. But he gave them a wide berth as they came crowding in, and there where Mentor sat, Antiphus, Halitherses too, his father's loyal friends from days gone by. He took his seat as they pressed him with their questions. And just then Piraeus the gallant spearman approached, leading a stranger through the town and out onto the meeting grounds. Telemachus, not hanging back, went right up to greet Theoclymenus, his guest, but Piraeus spoke first. "Quickly now, Telemachus, send some women to my house to retrieve the gifts that Menelaus gave you." "Wait, Piraeus," wary Telemachus cautioned. "We've no idea how all of this will go. If the brazen suitors cut me down in the palace, off guard, and carve apart my father's whole estate, I'd rather you yourself or one of his friends here keep those gifts and get some pleasure from them. But if I can bring down slaughter on that crew, you send the gifts to my house, we'll share the joy." Their plans made, he led the wayworn stranger home, and once they reached the well-constructed palace, spreading out their cloaks on a chair or bench, into the burnished tubs they climbed and bathed. When women had washed them, rubbed them down with oil, and drawn warm fleece and shirts around their shoulders, out of the bath they stepped and sat on high-backed chairs. A maid brought water soon in a graceful golden pitcher, and over a silver basin tipped it out, so they might rinse their hands, then pulled a gleaming table to their side. A state housekeeper brought on bread to serve them, appetizers aplenty too, lavish with her bounty. Penelope sat across from her son beside a pillar, leaning back on a low chair and winding fine-spun yarn. They reached out for the good things that lay at hand, and when they put aside desire for food and drink, the queen, for all her composure, said at last, "Telemachus, I'm going back to my room upstairs and lie down on my bed. That bed of pain my tears have streaked, year in, year out, from the day Odysseus sailed away to Troy with Atreus' 2 sons. But you never had the heart, before those insolent suitors crowd back to the house, to tell me clearly about your father's journey home, if you've heard any news." "Of course, mother," thoughtful Telemachus reassured her quickly. "I will tell you the whole true story now." We sailed to Pylos, to Nestor the great king, and he received me there in his lofty palace, treated me well and warmly, yes, as a father treats a long-lost son just home from voyaging, years abroad. Such care he showered on me, he and his noble sons, but of strong, enduring Odysseus, dead or alive, he's heard no news, he said, from any man on earth. He sent me on to the famous spearman Atrides Menelaus, and on with a team of horses drawing a bolted chariot. And there I saw her, Helen of Argos. All for Achaeans and Trojans suffered so much hardship, thanks to the gods' decree. The lord of the war cry, Menelaus, asked at once what pressing need had brought me to the lovely Lacedaemon. And when I told him the whole story, first to last, the king burst out, "How shameful. That's the bed of a brave man of war. They'd like to crawl inside, those spineless, craven cowards." Weak as the doe that beds down her fawns in a mighty lion's den, her newborn and sucklings, then trails off to the mountain spurs and grassy bends to graze her fill. But back the lion comes to his own lair, and the master deals both fawns a ghastly, bloody death, just what Odysseus will deal that mob, ghastly death. Ah, if only, Father Zeus, Athena, and Lord Apollo, that man who years ago in the games at Lesbos rode to Philomeleides' challenge, wrestled him, pinned him down with one tremendous throw, and the Argives roared with joy. If only that, Odysseus, sported with those suitors, a blood wedding, a quick death would take the lot. But about the things you've asked me so intently, I'll skew and sidestep nothing, not deceive you ever. Of all he told me, the old man of the sea who never lies, I'll hide or hold back nothing, not a single word. He said he'd seen Odysseus on an island, ground down in misery, off in a goddess's house, the nymph Calypso who holds him there by force. He has no way to voyage home to his own native land, no trim ships in reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back. So Menelaus, the famous spearman, told me. My mission accomplished, back I came at once, and the gods sent me a stiff following wind that sped me home to the native land I love. His reassurance stirred the queen to her depths, and the godlike seer Theoclymenus added firmly, Noble lady, wife of Laertes' son, Odysseus, Menelaus can have no perfect revelations. Mark my words. I will make you a prophecy, quite precise, and I'll hold nothing back. I swear by Zeus, the first of all the gods, by this table of hospitality here, my host, by Odysseus' hearth, where I have come for help, I swear Odysseus is on native soil, here and now. Poised or on the prowl, learning of these rank crimes, he's sowing seeds of ruin for all your suitors. So clear, so true, that bird sign I saw as I sat on the bench ship and sounded out the future to the prince. If only, my friend, reserved Penelope exclaimed, everything you say would come to pass. You'd soon know my affection, know my gifts. Any man you meet would call you blessed. And so the three confided in the halls while the suitors before Odysseus' palace amused themselves with discus and long throwing spears out on the leveled grounds, free and easy as always, full of swagger. When the dinner hour approached and sheep came from pastures near and far, driven in by familiar drovers, Medon called them all, their favorite herald, always present at their meals. My young lords, now you've played your games to your heart's content. Come back to the hall so we can fix your supper. Nothing's better than dining well on time. They came at his summons, rising from the games, and now, bustling into the well-constructed palace, flinging down their cloaks on a chair or bench, they butchered hulking sheep and fatted goats, full-grown hogs and a young cow from the herd, preparing for their feast. At the same time, the king and his loyal swineherd geared to leave the country for the town. Eumaeus, foreman of men, set things in motion. Friend, I know you're keen on going down to town today, just as my master bid, though I'd rather you stay here to guard the farm. But I prize the boy. I fear he'll blame me later. A dressing down from your master is hard to bear. So off we go now. The shank of the day is past. You'll find it colder with nightfall coming on. I know, I see your point, the crafty man replied. There's sense in this old head. So let's be off. And from now on, you lead me all the way. Just give me a stick to lean on, if you have one ready cut. You say the road is treacherous, full of slips and slides. With that, he flung his beggar's sack across his shoulders, torn and tattered, slung from a fraying rope. Eumaeus gave him a staff that met his needs. Then the two moved out, leaving behind them dogs and herdsmen to stay and guard the farm. And so the servant led his master toward the city, looking for all the world like an old and broken beggar, hunched on a stick, his body wrapped in shameful rags. Down over the rugged road they went, till hard by town they reached the stone-rimmed fountain running clear, where the city people came and drew their water. Ithaca built it once, with Nereidus and Polyctor. Round it a stand of poplar thrived on the dank soil, all in a nestling ring, and down from a rock ledge overhead the cold water splashed, and crowning the fountain rose an altar stone erected to the nymphs, where every traveler paused and left an offering. Here, Dolius' son, Melanthius, crossed their path, herding his goats with a pair of drovers' help, the pick of his flocks to make the suitors' meal. As soon as he saw them there, he broke into a flood of brutal, foul abuse that made Odysseus' blood boil. Look, he sneered, one scum nosing another scum along. Dirt finds dirt by the will of God, it never fails. Wretched pig boy, where do you take your filthy swine, the sickening beggar who licks the pots at feasts? Hanging round the doorposts, rubbing his back, scavenging after scraps. No heroes' swords and cauldrons, not for him. Hand him over to me. I'll teach him to work a farm, muck out my stalls, pitch feed to the young goats. Whey to drink will put some muscle on his hams. Oh no, he's learned his lazy ways too well. He's got no itch to stick to good hard work. He'd rather go scrounging round the countryside, begging for crusts to stuff his greedy gut. Let me tell you, so help me it's the truth, if he sets foot in King Odysseus' royal palace, salvos of footstools flung at his head by all the lords will crack his ribs as he runs the line of fire through the house. Wild, reckless taunts, and just as he passed Odysseus, the idiot lurched out with a heel and kicked his hip, but he couldn't knock the beggar off the path. He stood his ground so staunchly, Odysseus was torn. Should he wheel with his staff and beat the scoundrel senseless? Or hoist him by the midriff, split his skull in the rocks? He steeled himself instead, his mind in full control. But Eumaeus glared at the goatherd, cursed into his face, then lifted up his hands and prayed his heart out. O nymphs of the fountain, daughters of Zeus, if Odysseus ever burned you with long thighs of lambs or kids, covered with rich fat, now bring my prayer to pass. Let that man come back. Some god guide him now. He tossed the winds with the flashy show you make, Melanthius, so cocksure, always strutting around the town while worthless field hands leave your flocks a shambles. Listen to him, the goatherd shouted back. All bark and no bite from the vicious mutt. One fine day I'll ship him out in a black lugger, miles from Ithaca, sell him off for a good stiff price. Just let Apollo shoot Telemachus down with his silver bow. Today in the halls are the suitors snuff his life out. As sure as I know the day of the king's return is blotted out, the king is worlds away. With his parting shot he left them trudging on, and went and reached the royal house in no time. Slipping in, he took his seat among the suitors, facing Eurymachus, who favored him the most. The carvers set before him his plate of meat, A state housekeeper brought the man his bread. And now at last the king and loyal swineherd, drawing near the palace, halted just outside as the lyre's rippling music drifted round them. Phemius, striking up a song for assembled guests, and the master seized his servant's hand, exclaiming, "Friend, what a noble house! Odysseus' house it must be, no mistaking it. You could tell it among a townful. Look, one building linked to the next, and the courtyard wall is finished off with a fine coping. The double doors are battle-proof. No man could break them down. I can tell a crowd is feasting there in force. Smell the savor of roasts. The ringing lyre, listen. The lyre that God has made the friend of feasts." "An easy guess," you said, Eumaeus, swineherd, "for man as keen as you at every turn. Put heads together. What do we do next? Either you're the first one into the palace, mix with the suitors, leave me where I am. Or if you like, stay put, and I'll go first myself. Don't linger long. Someone might spot you here outside, knock you down or pelt you. Mark my words. Take care." The man who'd borne long years abroad replied, "Well, I know. Remember, there's sense in this, old head. You go in, you first, while I stay here behind. Stones and blows and I are hardly strangers. My heart is steeled by now. I've had my share of pain in the waves and wars. Add this to the total. Bring the trial on. But there's no way to hide the belly's hungers. What a curse, what mischief it brews in all our lives. Just for hunger we rig and ride our long bench ships on the barren salt sea, speeding death to enemies." Now as they talked on, a dog that lay there lifted up his muzzle, pricked his ears. It was Argus, long-enduring Odysseus' dog. He trained as a puppy once. But little joy he got, since all too soon he shipped to sacred Troy. In the old days, young hunters loved to set him coursing after the wild goats and deer and hares. But now with his master gone, he lay there, cast away on piles of dung from mules and cattle, heaps collecting out before the gates till Odysseus' serving men could cart it off to manure the king's estates. Infested with ticks, half dead from neglect, here lay the hound, old Argus. But the moment he sensed Odysseus standing by, he thumped his tail, nuzzling low, and his ears dropped, though he had no strength to drag himself an inch toward his master. Odysseus glanced to the side and flicked away a tear, hiding it from Eumaeus, diverting his friend in a hasty, off-handed way. "Strange Eumaeus, look, a dog like this, lying here on a dunghill. What handsome lines. But I can't say for sure if he had the running speed to match his looks, or he was only the sort that gentry spoil at table, show dogs masters pamper for their points. You told the stranger, Eumaeus, loyal swineherd. Here, it's all too true. Here's the dog of a man who died in foreign parts. But if he had now the form and flair he had in his glory days, as Odysseus left him sailing off to Troy, you'd be amazed to see such speed, such strength. No quarry he chased in the deepest, darkest woods could ever slip this hound. A champion tracker, too. But he's run out of luck now, poor fellow. His master's dead and gone, so far from home, and the heartless women tend him not at all. Slaves, with their lords, no longer there to crack the whip, lose all zest to perform their duties well. Zeus, the old thunderer, robs a man of half his virtue, the day the yoke clamps down around his neck. With that he entered the well-constructed palace, strode through the halls and joined the proud suitors. But the dark shadow of death closed down on Argus's eyes the instant he saw Odysseus 20 years away. Now Prince Telemachus, first by far to note the swineherd coming down the hall, nodded briskly, called and waved him on. Eumaeus, glancing about, picked up a handy stool where the carver always sat, slicing meat for the suitors feasting through the house. He took and put it beside the prince's table, facing him, straddled it himself as his steward set a plate of meat before the man and served him bread from trays. Right before him came Odysseus into his own house, looking for all the world like an old and broken beggar, hunched on a stick, his body wrapped in shameful rags. Just in the doorway, just at the ashwood threshold, there he settled down. Leaning against the cypress post, a master joiner, planed smooth and hung with a plumb line years ago. Telemachus motioned the swineherd over now, and choosing a whole loaf from a fine wicker tray, and as much meat as his outstretched hands could hold, he said, "Now take these to the stranger. Tell him, too, to make the rounds of the suitors, beg from one and all. Bashfulness for a man in need is no great friend." And Eumaeus did his bidding, went straight up to the guest and winged a greeting. "Here, stranger, Prince Telemachus sends you these, and tells you too to make the rounds of the suitors, beg from one and all. Bashfulness for a beggar, he says, is no great friend." "Powerful Zeus," the crafty king responded, "grant that your prince be blessed among mankind, and all his heart's desires come to pass." Taking the food in both hands, setting it down, spread out on his filthy back before his feet, the beggar fell to his meal, as the singer raised a song throughout the house. Once he'd supped and the stirring bard had closed, the suitors broke into uproar down along the hall. And now Athena came to the side of Laertes' royal son and urged him, "Go now, gather crusts from all the suitors, test them, so we can tell the innocent from the guilty." But not even so would Athena save one man from death. Still, off he went, begging from each in turn, circling left to right, reaching out his hand like a beggar from the day that he was born. They pitied him, gave him scraps, were puzzled too, asking each other, "Who is this? Where is he from?" Till the goatherd Melanthius shouted out in their midst, "Listen to me, you lords who court our noble queen. I'll tell you about the stranger. I've seen him before. I know for a fact the swineherd let him in, though I have no idea who the fellow is or where he thinks he comes from." At that, Antinous wheeled on Eumaeus, lashing out at him. "Your Highness, swineherd, why drag this to town? Haven't we got our share of vagabonds to deal with, disgusting beggars who lick the feasters' plates? Isn't it quite enough, these swarming crowds consuming your master's bounty? Must you invite this rascal in the bargain?" "Antinous, highborn as you are, you told the man, Eumaeus, that was a mean low speech. Now who'd go out, who on his own hook, not I, and ask a stranger in from nowhere unless he had some skills to serve the house? A prophet, a healer who cures a disease, a worker in wood, or even a God-inspired bard whose singing warms the heart. They're the ones asked in around the world. A beggar? Who'd invite a beggar to bleed his household white? You of all the suitors are always roughest on the servants of our king, on me most of all. Not that I care, no, so long as his queen, his wise queen, is still alive in the palace. Prince Telemachus, too." "Stop, Eumaeus," poised Telemachus broke in quickly now. "Don't waste so much breath on Antinous here. It's just his habit to bait a man with abuse and spur the rest as well." He wheeled on the suitor, letting loose. "How kind you are to me, Antinous, kind as a father to his son, encouraging me to send this stranger packing from my house with a harsh command. I'd never do it. God forbid. Take and give to the beggar. I don't grudge it. I'd even urge you on. No scruples now. Never fear your gifts will upset my mother or any servant in King Odysseus' royal house. But no such qualm could enter that head of yours, bent on feeding your own face, not feeding strangers." Antinous countered the young prince in kind. So high and mighty Telemachus, such unbridled rage. If all the suitors gave him the sort of gift I'll give, the house would be rid of him for 3 whole months. With that, from under his table, he seized the stool that propped his smooth feet as he reveled on, just lifting it into view. But as for the rest, all he gave to the beggar, filled his sack with handouts, bread and meat. And Odysseus seemed at the point of getting back to his doorsill, done with testing suitors, home for himself when he stopped beside Antinous, begging face to face. "Give me a morsel, friend. You're hardly the worst Achaean here, it seems. The noblest one, in fact. You look like a king to me. So you should give a bigger crust than the rest, and I will sing your praises all across the earth. I, too, once lived in a lofty house that men admired. Rolling in wealth, I'd often give to a vagabond like myself, whoever he was, whatever needed brought him to my door. And crowds of servants I had, and lots of all it takes to live the life of ease, to make men call you rich. But Zeus ruined it all, God's will, no doubt, when he shipped me off with a roving band of pirates bound for Egypt, a long hard sail to wreck my life." There in the Nile Delta I moored our ships of war. God knows I ordered my trusty crews to stand by, just where they were, and guard the anchored fleet. And I sent a patrol to scout things out from higher ground. But swept away by their own reckless fury, the crew went berserk. They promptly began to plunder the lush Egyptian farms, dragged off the women and children, killed the men. Outcries reached the city in no time. Stirred by shouts, the entire town came streaming down at the break of day, filling the river plain with chariots, ranks of infantry, and the gleam of bronze. Zeus, who loves the lightning, flung down murderous panic on all my men at arms. No one dared to stand his ground and fight. Disaster ringed us around from every quarter. Droves of my men they hacked down with swords, led off the rest alive, to labor for them as slaves. Myself, they passed me on to a stranger come their way, to ship me to Cyprus. Iasus' son, Demeter it was, who ruled Cyprus then with an iron fist. And from there I sailed to Ithaca, just as you see me now, ground down by pain and sorrow. Good God Almighty, Antinous cut the beggar short. What spirit brought this pest to plague our feast? Back off, into the open clear of my table, or you'll soon land in Egypt, Cyprus, to break your heart. What a brazen, shameless beggar, scrounging food from each man in turn, and look at their handouts, reckless, never a qualm, no holding back, not one making free with the next man's goods. Each one's got plenty here. Pity, the wry Odysseus countered, drawing away. No sense in your head to match your handsome looks. You grudge your servant a pinch of salt from your own larder. You who lounge at the next man's board, but lack the heart to tear a crust of bread and hand it on to me, though there's God's plenty here. Boiling over, Antinous gave him a scathing look and let fly. Now you won't get out of the hall unscarred, I swear. Not after such a filthy string of insults. With that, he seized the stool and hurled it. Square in the back it struck Odysseus, just under the right shoulder, but he stood up against it, steady as a rock. Unstaggered by Antinous' blow, just shook his head, silent, his mind churning with thoughts of bloody work. Back he went to the door sill, crouched, and setting down his sack about to burst, he faced the suitors, saying, Hear me out, you lords who court the noble queen. I must say what the heart inside me urges. There's nothing to groan about, no hurt, when a man takes a blow as he fights to save his own possessions, cattle or shining flocks. But Antinous struck me all because of my good-for-nothing belly, that curse that makes such pain for us poor men. But if beggars have their gods and furies too, let Antinous meet his death before he meets his bride. Enough, stranger, Antinous volleyed back. Sit there and eat in peace, or go get lost, or else, for the way you talk, these young men will hale you up and down the halls by your hands or feet until you're skinned alive. Naked threats, but the rest were outraged, even those brash suitors. One would say to another, Look, Antinous, that was a crime to strike the luckless beggar. Your fate is sealed if he's some god from the blue. And the gods do take on the look of strangers dropping in from abroad, disguised in every way as they roam and haunt our cities, watching over us. All our foul play, all our fair play too. So they warned, but Antinous paid no heed, and the anguish welled up in Telemachus' breast for the blow his father took. Yet he let no tears go rolling down his face. He just shook his head, silent, his mind churning with thoughts of bloody work. But then, when cautious Queen Penelope heard how Antinous struck the stranger, there in the hall she cried out, with her serving women round her, May Apollo the archer strike you just as hard. And her housekeeper, your enemy, added quickly, If only our prayers were granted, then not one of the lot would live to see dawn climb her throne tomorrow. Dear old woman, alert Penelope replied, they're all hateful, plotting their vicious plots. But Antinous is the worst of all. He's Black Death itself. Here's this luckless stranger, wandering down the halls and begging scraps, hard-pressed by need, and the rest all give the man his fill of food. But that one gives him a footstool hurled at his right shoulder, hits his back. While she exclaimed among her household women, sitting there in her room, Odysseus bent to supper. Penelope called the swineherd in and gave instructions. Go, good Eumaeus. Tell the stranger to come at once. I'd like to give him a warm welcome. Ask the man if he's heard some news about my gallant husband or seen him in the flesh. He seems like one who's roved around the world. My queen, you answered, Eumaeus, loyal swineherd. If only the lords would hold their peace a moment. Such stories he tells, he'd charm you to your depths. 3 nights, 3 days I kept him in my shelter. I was the first the fellow stumbled onto, fleeing from some ship. But not even so could he bring his tale of troubles to an end. You know how you can stare at a bard and wonder, trained by the gods to sing and hold men spellbound, how you can long to sit there, listening all your life when the man begins to sing. So he charmed my heart, I'd tell you, huddling there beside me at my fire. He and Odysseus' father go way back, he says, sworn friends, and the stranger hails from Crete, where the stock of old King Minos still lives on. And from Crete he made his way, racked by hardship, tumbling on like a rolling stone until he turned up here. He swears he's heard of Odysseus, just in reach, enriched the Thesprotian country, still alive, laden with treasure, heading home at last. Go, the cautious queen responded. Call him here so he can tell me his own tale face to face. Our friends can sit at the gates or down the halls and play their games, debauch their heart's content. Why not? Their own stores, their bread and seasoned wine lie intact at home, food for their serving men alone. But they infest our palace day and night. They butcher our cattle, our sheep, our fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swilling our glowing wine. As if there's no tomorrow, all of it squandered. No, there is no man like Odysseus in command to drive this curse from the house. Dear God, if only Odysseus came back to native soil now, he and his son would avenge the outrage of these men. Like that. At her last words, Telemachus shook with a lusty sneeze, like a thunderclap resounding up and down the halls. The queen was seized with laughter, calling out to Eumaeus winged words, Quickly, go. Bring me the stranger now face to face. You hear how my son sealed all I said with a sneeze? So let death come down with grim finality on these suitors, one and all. Not a single man escape his sudden doom. And another thing, mark my words, I tell you. If I'm convinced that all he says is true, I'll dress him in shirt and cloak, in handsome clothes. Off the swineherd went, following her instructions, made his way to the stranger's side and winged a word. Old friend, our queen, wise Penelope summons you, the prince's mother. The spirit moves her now, heartsick as she is, to ask a question or two about her husband. If she's convinced that all you say is true, she'll dress you in shirt and cloak. That's what you need. That most of all now. Bread you can always beg around the country, fill your belly well. They'll give you food, whoever has a mind to. Gladly, Eumaeus, the patient man replied. I'll tell her the whole truth and nothing but Icarius' daughter, your wise queen Penelope. I know all about that man. It's been my lot to suffer what he suffered. But I fear the mob's abuse, those rough young bucks, their pride and violence hit the iron skies. Just now that scoundrel, as I went down the halls, harming no one, up and dealt me a jolting blow. And who would raise a hand to save me? Telemachus? Anyone else? No one. So tell Penelope now, anxious as she might be, to wait in the halls until the sun goes down. Then she can ask me all she likes about her husband's journey home. But let her give me a seat close by the fire. The clothes on my back are tatters. Well, you know, you are the first I begged for care and shelter. Back the swineherd went, following his instructions. Penelope, just as he crossed her threshold, broke out. Didn't you bring him? What's in the vagrant's mind? Fear of someone? Embarrassed by something else? Here in the house? Is the fellow bashful? A bashful man will make a sorry beggar. You answered your queen, Eumaeus, loyal swineherd. He talks to the point. He thinks as the next man would who wants to dodge their blows, that brutal crew. He tells you to wait here till the sun goes down. It's better for you, my queen. Then you can talk with the man in private, hear the stranger's news. Nobody's fool, that stranger, wise Penelope said. He sees how things could go. Surely no man on earth can match that gang for reckless, deadly schemes. So she agreed, and now, mission accomplished, back the loyal swineherd went to mix with the suitors. Moving next to the prince, he whispered a long parting word, their heads close together so no one else could hear. Dear boy, I must be off to see to the pigs and the whole farm. You're living, mine as well. You're the one to tend all things here. Look out for your own skin first. Do take care. You mustn't come to grief. Crowds of your own countrymen plot your death. Let Zeus wipe out the lot before they kill us all. Right you are, old friend, the canny prince replied. Now off you go, once you've had your supper. But come back bright and early. Bring some good sound boars for slaughter. Yes, I'll tend to all things here. I am the deathless gods. And the swineherd sat down again on his polished stool, and once he'd supped and drunk to his heart's content, back he went to his pigs, leaving the royal precincts still filled with feasters, all indulging now in the joys of dance and song. The day was over. Dusk was falling fast. Book 18. The Beggar King of Ithaca. Now along came this tramp, this public nuisance who used to scrounge a living around the streets of Ithaca, notorious for his belly, a ravenous, bottomless pit for food and drink. But he had no pith, no brawn, despite the looming hulk that met your eyes. Arneus was his name, so his worthy mother called him at birth, but all the young men called him Iris for short, because he'd hustle messages at any beck and call. Well, he came by to rout the king from his own house and met Odysseus now with a rough, abusive burst. Get off the porch, you old goat, before I haul you off by the leg. Can't you see them give me the wink? All of them here to drag you out, and so I would, but I've got some pangs of conscience. Up with you, man. Or before you know it, we'll be trading blows. A killing look, and the wily old soldier countered, Out of your mind? What damage have I done you? What have I said? I don't grudge you anything. Not if the next man up and gives you plenty. This door sill's big enough for the both of us. You've got no call to grudge me what's not yours. You're another vagrant, just like me, I'd say, and it lies with the gods to make us rich or poor. So keep your fist to yourself. Don't press your luck. Don't rile me. Or old as I am, I'll bloody your lip, splatter your chest, and buy myself some peace and quiet for tomorrow. I doubt you'll ever come lumbering back again to the halls of Laertes' royal son Odysseus. Look who's talking, the beggar rumbled in anger. How this pot-bellied pig runs off at the mouth like an old crone at her oven. Well, I've got a knockout blow in store for him. I'll batter the tramp with both fists, crack every tooth from his jaws. I'll litter the ground with teeth like a rogue sow's punished for rooting corn. Belt up, so the lords can see us fight it out. How can you beat a champion half your age? Tongue lashing each other, tempers flaring, they're on the polished sill before the lofty doors. And Antinous, that grand prince, hearing them wrangle, broke into gloating laughter, calling out to the suitors, Friends, nothing like this has come our way before. What sport some god has brought the palace now? The stranger and Iris, look. They'd battle it out together, fists flying. Come, let's pit them against each other, fast. All leapt from their seats with whoops of laughter, clustering round the pair of ragged beggars there, as Eupithes' son Antinous planned the contest. Quiet, my fine friends. Here's what I propose. These goat sausages sizzling here in the fire, we pack them with fat and blood to have for supper. Now, whoever wins this bout and proves the stronger, let that man step up and take his pick of the lot. What's more, from this day on he feasts among us. No other beggar will be allowed inside to catch his meals from us. They all cheered, but Odysseus, foxy veteran, plodded on. Friends, how can an old man worn down with pain stand up to a young buck? It's just this belly of mine, this troublemaker, tempts me to take a licking. So first, all of you swear me a binding oath. Come, not one of you steps in for Iris here, strikes me a foul blow to pull him through and lays me in the dust. And at that, they all mouthed the oath that he required, and once they vowed they'd never interfere, Prince Telemachus drove the matter home. Stranger, if your spine and fighting pride prompt you to go against this fellow now, have no fear of any suitor in the pack. Whoever fouls you will have to face a crowd. Count on me, your host. And 2 lords back me up, Antinous and Eurymachus. Both are men of sense. They all shouted approval of the prince as Odysseus belted up, roping his rags round his loins, bearing his big, rippling thighs, his boxer's broad shoulders, his massive chest and burly arms on full display, as Athena stood beside him, fleshing out the limbs of the great commander. Despite their swagger, the suitors were amazed, gaping at one another, trading forecasts. Iris will soon be ironed out for good. He's in the beating he begged for all along. Look at the hams on that old-timer, just under his rags. Each outcry jolted Iris to the core, too late. The servants trussed his clothes up, dragged him on, the flesh on his body quaking now with terror. Antinous rounded on him, flinging insults. You clumsy ox, you're better off dead or never born at all. If you cringe at him, paralyzed with fear of an old, broken hulk, ground down by the pains that hound his steps. Mark my word, so help me, I'll make it good. If that old relic whips you and wins the day, I'll toss you into a black ship and sail you off to Ecodus, the mainland king who wrecks all men alive. He'll lop your nose and ears with his ruthless blade. He'll rip your privates out by the roots, he will, and serve them up to his dogs to bolt down raw. That threat shook his knees with a stronger fit, but they hauled him into the ring. Both men put up their fists, with the seasoned fighter Odysseus deeply torn now. Should he knock him senseless, leave him dead where he dropped, or just stretch him out on the ground with a light jab? As he mulled things over, that way seemed the best. A glancing blow, the suitors would not detect him. The two men squared off, and Iris hurled a fist at Odysseus' right shoulder as he came through with a hook below the ear, pounding Iris' neck, smashing the bones inside. Suddenly red blood came spurting out of his mouth, and headlong down he pitched in the dust, howling, teeth locked in a grin, feet beating the ground. And the princely suitors, flinging their hands in the air, died laughing. Grabbing him by the leg, Odysseus hauled him through the porch across the yard to the outer gate. He heaped him against the courtyard wall, sitting slumped, stuck his stick in his hand and gave him a parting shot. Now hold your post, play the scarecrow to all the pigs and dogs, but no more lording it over strangers, no more playing the beggar king for you, you loathsome fool, or you'll bring down something worse around your neck. He threw his beggar's sack across his shoulders, torn and tattered, slung from a fraying rope, and then back he went to the sill and took his seat. The suitors ambled back as well, laughing jauntily, toasting the beggar warmly now, these proud young blades, one man egging the other on. Stranger friend, may Zeus and the other deathless gods fill up your sack with blessings, all your heart desires. You've knocked him out of action, that insatiable tramp, the parasite on the land. Ship him off to Ecodus, fast, the mainland king who wrecks all men alive. Welcome words and a lucky omen too. Odysseus' heart leapt up. Antinous laid before him a generous goat sausage, bubbling fat and blood. Amphinomus took 2 loaves from the wicker tray and set them down beside him, drank his health in a golden cup and said, Cheers, old friend, old father, saddled now as you are with so much trouble. Here's to your luck, great days from this day on. And the one who knew the world replied at length, Amphinomus, you seem like a man of good sense to me. Just like your father, at least I've heard his praises. Nisus, son of Dulichion, a righteous man, and rich. You're his son, they say. You seem well spoken, too. So I will tell you something. Listen closely. Of all that breathes and crawls across the earth, our Mother Earth breeds nothing feebler than a man. So long as the gods grant him power, spring in his knees, he thinks he will never suffer affliction down the years. But then, when the happy gods bring on the long hard times, bear them he must, against his will, and steel his heart. Our lives, our mood and mind as we pass across the earth, turn as the days turn. As the Father of men and gods make each day dawn. I too seem destined to be a man of fortune once, and a wild wicked swath I cut, indulged by my lust for violence, staking all on my father and my brothers. Look at me now. And so I say, let no man ever be lawless all his life. Just take in peace what gifts the gods will send. True. But here I see you suitors plotting your reckless work, carving away at the wealth, affronting the loyal wife of a man who won't be gone from kin and country long. I say he's right at hand, May some power save you, spirit you home before you meet him face to face, the moment he returns to native ground. Once under his own roof, he and your friends, believe you me, won't part till blood is flowed. With that, he poured out honeyed wine to the gods and drank deeply, then restored the cup to the young prince's hands. Amphinomus made his way back through the hall, his heart sick with anguish, shaking his head, fraught with grave forebodings. But not even so could he escape his fate. Even then Athena had bound him fast to death at the hands of Prince Telemachus and his spear. Now back he went to the seat that he'd left empty. But now the goddess Athena with her glinting eyes inspired Penelope, Icarius' daughter, wary, poised, to display herself to her suitors, fan their hearts, inflame them more, and make her even more esteemed by her husband and her son than she had been before. Forcing a laugh, she called her maid. Your enemy, my spirit longs, though it never did till now, to appear before my suitors, loathe them as I do. I'd say a word to my son, too, for his own good, not to mix so much with that pernicious crowd, so glib with their friendly talk, but plotting wicked plots they'll hatch tomorrow. Well said, my child, the old woman answered, all to the point. Go to the boy and warn him now, hold nothing back. But first you should bathe yourself, give a gloss to your face. Don't go down like that, your eyes dimmed, your cheeks streaked with tears. It makes things worse, this grieving on and on. Your son's now come of age, your fondest prayer to the deathless gods to see him wear a beard. Your enemy, discreet Penelope objected. Don't try to coax me. Care for me as you do, to bathe myself, refresh my face with oils. Whatever glow I had died long ago. The gods of Olympus snuffed it out that day my husband sailed away in the hollow ships. But please, have Atanoe and Hippodamia come and sport me in the hall. I'll never brave those men alone. I'd be too embarrassed. Now as the old nurse bustled through the house to give the women orders, call them to the queen, the bright-eyed goddess thought of one more thing. She drifted a sound slumber over Icarius' daughter. Back she sank and slept. Her limbs fell limp and still, reclining there on her couch, all the while Athena, luminous goddess, lavished immortal gifts on her to make her suitors lose themselves in wonder. The divine unguent first, she cleansed her cheeks, her brow and fine eyes with ambrosia smooth as the oils the goddess love applies, donning her crown of flowers whenever she joins the Graces' captivating dances. She made her taller, fuller in form to all men's eyes, her skin whiter than ivory, freshly carved, and now, Athena's mission accomplished, off the bright one went, as bare-armed maids came in from their own quarters, chattering all the way, and sleep released the queen. She woke, touched her cheek with a hand, and mused. Ah, what a marvelous gentle sleep, enfolding me in the midst of all my anguish. Now if only blessed Artemis sent me a death as gentle now, this instant, no more wasting away my life. My heart broken and longing for my husband. He had every strength, rising over his countrymen, head and shoulders. Then, leaving her well-lit chamber, she descended. Not alone, two of her women followed close behind. That radiant woman, once she reached her suitors, drawing her glistening veil across her cheeks, paused now where a column propped the sturdy roof, with one of her loyal handmaids stationed either side. The suitors' knees went slack, their hearts dissolved in lust. All of them lifted prayers to lie beside her, share her bed. But turning toward her son, she warned, Telemachus, your sense of balance is not what it used to be. When you were a boy, you had much better judgment. Now that you've grown and reached your young prime, and any stranger, seeing how tall and handsome you are, would think you the son of some great man of wealth. Now your sense of fairness seems to fail you. Consider the dreadful thing just done in our halls, how you let the stranger be so abused. Why, suppose our guests sitting here at peace, here in our own house, were hauled and badly hurt by such cruel treatment, you'd be shamed, disgraced in all men's eyes. Mother, Telemachus paused, then answered, I cannot fault your anger at all this. My heart takes note of everything, feels it too, both the good and the bad. The boy you knew is gone. But how can I plan my world in a sane, thoughtful way? These men drive me mad, hedging me around, right and left, plotting their lethal plots, and no one takes my side. Still, this battle between the stranger and Iris hardly went as the suitors might have hoped. The stranger beat him down. If only Father Zeus, Athena, and Lord Apollo, these gallants, now, this moment, here in our house, were battered senseless, heads lolling, knees unstrung. Some sprawled in the courtyard, some sprawled outside, slumped like Iris down at the front gates now, whipped and his head rolling like some drunk. He can't stand up on his feet and stagger home. Whatever home he's got, the man's demolished. So Penelope and her son exchanged their hopes as Eurymachus stepped in to praise the queen. Ah, daughter of Icarius, wise Penelope, if all the princes in Ionian Argos saw you now, what a troop of suitors would banquet in your halls tomorrow at sunrise. You surpass all women in build and beauty, refined and steady mind. Oh no, Eurymachus, wise Penelope demurred. Whatever form and feature I had, what praise I'd won. The deathless gods destroyed that day the Achaeans sailed away to Troy, my husband in their ships. Odysseus, if he could return to tend my life, the renown I had would only grow in glory. Now my life is torment. Look at the grief some gods has loosed against me. I'll never forget the day he left this land of ours. He caught my right hand by the wrist and said gently, Dear woman, I doubt that every Achaean under arms will make it home from Troy, all safe and sound. The Trojans, they say, are fine soldiers too, hurling javelins, shooting flights of arrows, charioteers who can turn the tide, like that. When the great leveler, war, brings on some deadlock. So I cannot tell if the gods will sail me home again, or I'll go down out there on the fields of Troy. But all things here must rest in your control. Watch over my father and mother in the palace, just as now, or perhaps a little more, when I am far from home. But once you see the beard on the boy's cheek, you wed the man you like, and leave your house behind. So my husband advised me then. Now it all comes true. A night will come when a hateful marriage falls my lot. This cursed life of mine. Zeus has torn away my joy. But there's something else that mortifies me now. Your way is a far cry from the time-honored way of suitors locked in rivalry, striving to win some noble woman, a wealthy man's daughter. They bring in their own calves and lambs to feast the friends of the bride-to-be, yes, and shower her with gleaming gifts as well. They don't devour the woman's goods scot-free. Staunch Odysseus glowed with joy to hear all this, his wife's trickery, luring gifts from his suitors now, enchanting their hearts with suave, seductive words, but all the while with something else in mind. Gifts? Eupeithes' son Antinous took her point at once. Daughter of Icarius, sensible Penelope, whatever gifts your suitors would like to bring, accept them. How ungracious to turn those gifts away. We won't go back to our own estates or anywhere else till you have wed the man you find the best. So he proposed, and all the rest agreed. Each suitor sent a page to go and get a gift. Antinous' man brought in a grand, resplendent robe, stiff with embroidery, clasped with 12 gold brooches, long pins that clipped into the sheathing loops with ease. Eurymachus' man brought in a necklace richly wrought, gilded, strung with amber, and glowing like the sun. Eurydamas' 2 men came with a pair of earrings, mulberry clusters dangling in triple drops with a glint to catch the heart. From the halls of Lord Pisander, Polyctor's son, a servant brought a choker, a fine, gleaming treasure. And so each suitor in turn laid on a handsome gift. Then the noble queen withdrew to her upper room, her file of waiting ladies close behind her, bearing the gorgeous presents in their arms. Now the suitors turned to dance and song, to the lovely beat and sway, waiting for dusk to come upon them there, and the dark night came upon them lost in pleasure. They rushed to set up 3 braziers along the walls to give them light, piled them high with kindling, sear, well seasoned, just split with an axe, and mixed in chips to keep the torches flaring. The maids of Odysseus, steady man, took turns to keep the fires up, but the king himself, dear to the gods and cunning to the core, gave them orders brusquely. Maids of Odysseus, your master gone so long, quick now. Off you go to the room where your queen and mistress waits. Sit with her there and try to lift her spirits, combing wool in your hands or spinning yarn. But I will trim the torches for all her suitors, even if they would like to revel on till morning mounts their throne. They'll never wear me down. I have a name for lasting out the worst. At that, the women burst into laughter, glancing back and forth. Flushed with beauty, Melantho mocked him shamelessly. Dolius was her father, but Penelope brought her up. She treated her like her own child and gave her toys to cheer her heart. But despite that, her heart felt nothing for all her mistress's anguish now. She was Eurymachus' lover, always slept with him. She was the one who mocked her king and taunted. Cock of the walk, did someone beat your brains out? Why not go bed down at the blacksmith's cozy forge, or a public place where tramps collect? Why here, blithering on nonstop, bold as brass in the face of all these lords? No fear in your heart? Wine's got to your wits? Or do you always play the fool and babble nonsense? Lost your head, have you, because you drubbed that hobo Iris? You wait. A better man than Iris will take you on. He'll box both sides of your skull with heavy fists and cart you from the palace gushing blood. You wait, you bitch. The hardened veteran flashed a killing look. I'll go straight to the prince with your foul talk. The prince will chop you to pieces here and now. His fury sent the women fluttering off, scattering down the hall with panic shaking every limb. They knew he spoke the truth. But he took up his post by the flaring braziers, tending the fires closely, looking after them all. Though the heart inside him stirred with other things, ranging ahead now to all that must be done. But Athena had no mind to let the brazen suitors hold back now from their heart-rending insults. She meant to make the anguish cut still deeper into the core of Laertes' son, Odysseus. Polypus' son, Eurymachus, launched in first, baiting the king to give his friends a laugh. Listen to me, you lords who court our noble queen. I simply have to say what's on my mind. Look, surely the gods have fetched this beggar here to Odysseus' house. At least our torchlight seems to come from the sheen of the man's own head. There's not a hair on his bald pate, not a wisp. Then he wheeled on Odysseus, raider of cities. Stranger, how would you like to work for me if I took you on? I'd give you decent wages. Picking the stones to lay a tight dry wall or planting tall trees on the edge of my estate. I'll give you rations to last you year round. Clothes for your body, sandals for your feet. Oh no, you've learned your lazy ways too well. You've got no itch to stick to good hard work. You'd rather go scrounging around the countryside, begging for crusts to stuff your greedy gut. Ah, Eurymachus, Odysseus, master of many exploits, answered firmly. If only the two of us could go man to man in the labors of the field. In the late spring, when the long days come round, out in the meadow, I swinging a well-curved scythe and you swinging yours, we test our strength for work. Fasting right till dusk with lots of hay to mow. Or give us a team of oxen to drive, purebreds, hulking ruddy beasts, both lusty with fodder, paired for age and pulling power that never flags, with 4 acres to work. The loam churning under the plow. You'd see what a straight and broken furrow I could cut you then. Or if Zeus would bring some battle on out of the blue this very day and give me a shield and 2 spears and a bronze helmet to fit this soldier's temples, then you'd see me fight where front ranks clash. No more mocking this belly of mine, not then. Enough. You're sick with pride, you brood of fool. No doubt you count yourself a great, powerful man because you swore with a puny crowd, ill-bred to boot. If only Odysseus came back home and stood right here. In a flash, you'd find those doors, broad as they are, too cramped for your race to safety through the porch. That made Eurymachus' fury seethe and burst. He gave the beggar a dark look and let fly. You odious, I'll make you pay for your ugly rants. Bold as brass in the face of all these lords, no fear in your heart. Wine's got to your wits. Or do you always play the fool and babble nonsense? Lost your head, have you, because you drubbed that hobo Iris? As he shouted out, he seized a stool, but Odysseus, fearing the blow, crouched at Amphinomus's knees as Eurymachus hurled and hit the wine steward, clipping his right hand. His cup dropped, clattered along the floor, and flat on his back he went, groaning in the dust. The suitors broke into uproar through the shadowed halls, glancing at one another, trading angry outcries. Would to God this drifter had dropped dead anywhere else before he landed here. Then he'd have never have loosed such pandemonium. Now we're squabbling over beggars. No more joy in the sumptuous feast. Now riot rules the day. But now Prince Telemachus dressed them down. Fools, you're out of your minds. No hiding it. Food and wine have gone to your heads. Some god has got your blood up. Come, now you've eaten well, go home to bed. When the spirit moves, that is. I, for one, I'll drive no guest away. So he declared, and they all bit their lips, amazed the prince could speak with so much daring. At last, Amphinomus rose to take the floor, the noted son of Nisus, King Arrhetius' grandson. Fair enough, my friends. When a man speaks well, we have no grounds for wrangling, no cause for abuse. Hands off the stranger, and any other servant in King Odysseus' palace. Come, steward, pour first drops for the god in every cup. Let's make libations, then go home to bed. The stranger, leave him here in Odysseus' halls, and have his host. Telemachus, tend him well. It's the prince's royal house the man has reached. So he said. His proposal pleased them all. And gallant Mullius, a herald of Dulichion, a friend in arms of Lord Amphinomus too, mixed the men a bowl, and hovering closely, poured full rounds for all. They tipped cups to the blissful gods, and then, libations made, they drank the heady wine to their heart's content, and went their ways to bed, each suitor to his house. Book 19. Penelope and her guest. That left the great Odysseus waiting in his hall, as Athena helped him plot the slaughter of the suitors. He turned at once to Telemachus, brisk with orders. Now you must stow the weapons out of reach, my boy, all the arms and armor, and when the suitors miss them and ask you questions, put them off with a winning story. I stowed them away clear of the smoke. A far cry from the arms Odysseus left when he went to Troy, fire-damaged equipment, black with reeking fumes. And a god reminded me of something darker too. When you're in your cups, a quarrel might break out. You'd wound each other, shame your feasting here, and cast a pall on your courting. Iron has powers to draw a man to ruin. Telemachus did his father's will at once, calling out to his old nurse, Eurycleia. Quick, dear one, close the women up in their own quarters, till I can stow my father's weapons in the storeroom. Splendid gear lying about, neglected, black with soot since father sailed away. I was only a boy then, now I must safeguard them from the smoke. High time, child, the loving nurse replied. If only you'd bothered to tend your whole house and safeguard all your treasures. Tell me, who's to fetch and carry the torch for you? You won't let out the maids who'd light your way. Our friend here will, Telemachus answered coolly. I won't put up with a man who shirks his work, not if he takes his ration from my stores, even if he's miles away from home. That silenced the old nurse. She barred the doors that led from the long hall, and up they sprang. Odysseus and his princely son, and began to carry off the helmets, studded shields, and pointed spears. In Pallas Athena strode before them, lifting a golden lamp that cast a dazzling radiance round about. Father, Telemachus suddenly burst out to Odysseus. Oh, what a marvel fills my eyes. Look there, all the sides of the hall, the handsome crossbeams, pinewood rafters, the tall columns towering, all glow in my eyes like flaming fire. Surely a god is here, one of those who rule the vaulting skies. Quiet, his father, the old soldier, warned him. Get a grip on yourself. No more questions now. It's just the way of the gods who rule Olympus. Off you go to bed. I'll stay here behind to test the women, test your mother too. She in her grief will ask me everything I know. Under the flaring torchlight through the hall, Telemachus made his way to his own bedroom now, where he always went when welcome sleep came on him. There he lay tonight as well, till dawn's first light. Then left the great king still, waiting in his hall, as Athena helped him plot the slaughter of the suitors. Now down from her chamber came reserved Penelope, looking for all the world like Artemis or golden Aphrodite. Close to the fire her women drew her favorite chair, with its whirls of silver and glory, and ivory, inlaid rings. The craftsman who made it years ago, Icmalius, added a footrest under the seat itself, mortised into the frame, and over it all was draped a heavy fleece. Here Penelope took her place, discreet, observant. The women, arms bared, pressing in from their quarters, cleared away the tables, the heaped remains of the feast, and the cups from which the raucous lord had drunk. Raking embers from the braziers onto the ground, they piled them high again with seasoned wood, providing light and warmth. Yet again Melantho lashed out at Odysseus. You still here, you pest, slinging round the house all night, leering up at the women? Get out, you tramp. Be glad of the fool you got, or we'll sling a torch at you, rout you out at once. A killing glance, and the old trooper countered. What's possessed you, woman? Why lay into me? Such abuse. Just because I'm filthy, because I wear such rags, roving around the country, living hand to mouth. But it's fate that drives me on. That's the lot of beggars, homeless drifters. I too once lived in a lofty house that men admired. Rolling in wealth, I'd often give to a vagabond like myself, whoever he was, whatever need had brought him to my door. And crowds of servants I had, and lots of all it takes to live the life of ease, to make men call you rich. But Zeus ruined it all, God's will no doubt. So beware, woman, or one day you may lose it all your glitter that puts your workmates in the shade. Or your mistress may just fly in a rage and dress you down, or Odysseus may return, there's still room for hope. Or if he's dead as you think and never coming home, well, there's his son, Telemachus. Like father, like son, thanks to God Apollo. No woman's wildness here in the house escapes the prince's eye. He's come of age at last. So he warned, and alert Penelope heard him, wheeled on the maid and tongue-lashed her smartly. Make no mistake, you brazen, shameless bitch. None of your ugly work escapes me either. You'll pay for it with your life, you will. How well you knew. You heard from my own lips that I meant to probe the stranger in our house and ask about my husband. My heart breaks for him. She turned to her housekeeper, your enemy, and said, Now bring us a chair and spread it soft with fleece, so our guest can sit and tell me his whole story, and hear me out as well. I'd like to ask him questions point by point. Your enemy bustled off to fetch a polished chair, and set it down and spread it soft with fleece. Here Odysseus sat, the man of many trials, as cautious Penelope began the conversation. Stranger, let me start our questioning myself. Who are you? Where are you from? Your city? Your parents? My good woman, the Odysseus, master of craft, replied. No man on the face of the earth could find fault with you. Your fame, believe me, has reached the vaulting skies. Fame like a flawless king's who dreads the gods, who governs a kingdom vast, proud and strong, who upholds justice true, and the black earth bears wheat and barley, trees bow down with fruit, and the sheep drop lambs and never fail, and the sea teems with fish, thanks to his decent, upright rule, and under his sovereign sway the people flourish. So then, here in your house, ask me anything else, but don't, please, search out my birth, my land, or you'll fill my heart to overflowing even more as I bring back the past. I'm a man who's had his share of sorrows. It's wrong for me in someone else's house to sit here moaning and groaning, sobbing so. It makes things worse, this grieving on and on. One of your maids, or you yourself, might scold me. Think it's just the wine that it had doused my wits and made me drown in tears. No, stranger, wise Penelope demurred. Whatever form and feature I had, what praise I'd won, the deathless gods destroyed that day the Achaeans sailed away to Troy, my husband in their ships. Odysseus, if he could return to tend my life, the renown I had would only grow in glory. Now my life is torment. Look at the griefs some god has loosed against me. All the nobles who rule the islands round about, Dulichion, Sami, and wooded Zacynthus too, and all who lord it in sunny Ithaca itself, they court me against my will. They lay waste on my house. So I pay no heed to strangers, suppliants at my door, not even heralds out on their public errands here. I yearn for Odysseus, always. My heart pines away. They rush the marriage on, and I spin out my wiles. A god from the blue, it was inspired me first to set up a great loom in our royal halls, and I began to weave, and the weaving fine spun, the yarns endless, and I would lead them on. Young men, my suitors, now that King Odysseus is no more, go slowly, keen as you are to marry me, until I can finish off this web. So my weaving won't all fray and come to nothing. This is a shroud for old Laertes for that day when the deadly fate that lays us out at last will take him down. I dread the shame my countrywomen would heap upon me. Yes, if a man of such wealth should lie in state without a shroud for cover. My very words, and despite their pride and passion, they believe me. So by day, I'd weave at my great and growing web. By night, by the light of torches set beside me, I would unravel all I'd done. 3 whole years I deceived them blind, seduced them with this scheme. Then when the wheeling seasons brought the 4th year on, and the months waned and the long days came round once more, then, thanks to my maids, the shameless, reckless creatures, the suitors caught me in the act, denounced me harshly. So I finished it off, against my will. They forced me, and now I cannot escape a marriage, nor can I try of a deft way out. My parents urge me to tie the knot, and my son is galled as they squander his estate. He sees it all. He's a grown man by now, equipped to tend his own royal house and tend it well. Zeus grants my son that honor. But for all that, now tell me who you are. Where do you come from? You've hardly sprung from a rock or oak like some old man of legend. The master improviser answered, slowly, My lady, wife of Laertes' son Odysseus, will your questions about my family never end? All right then, here's my story, even though it plunges me into deeper grief than I feel now. But that's the way of the world, when one has been so far from home, so long away as I, roving over many cities of men, enduring many hardships. Still, my story will tell you all you need to know. There is a land called Crete, ringed by the wine-dark sea with rolling whitecaps, handsome country, fertile, thronged with people well past counting, boasting 90 cities, language mixing with language side by side. First come the Achaeans, then the native Cretans, hardly, gallant in action, then Sidonian clansmen, Dorians living in 3 tribes, and proud Pelasgians at last. Central to all their cities is magnificent Knossos, a site where Minos ruled, and each 9th year conferred with Almighty Zeus himself. Minos, father of my father, Deucalion, that bold heart. Besides myself, Deucalion sired Prince Idomeneus, who set sail for Troy in his beaked ships of war, escorting Atreus' sons. My own name is Aethon. I am the younger born. My older brother's a better man than I am. Now, it was there in Knossos that I saw him, Odysseus, and we traded gifts of friendship. A heavy gale had landed him on our coast, driven him way off course, rounding Malia's Cape when he was bound for Troy. He anchored in Amnisus, hard by the goddess's cave of childbirth and labor, that rough labor, barely riding out the storm. He came into town at once, asking for Idomeneus, claiming to be my brother's close, respected friend. Too late, 10 or 11 days had already passed since he set sail for Troy in his beaked ships, so I took Odysseus back to my own house, gave him a hero's welcome, treated him in style. Stores in our palace made for princely entertainment. As for his comrades, all who'd shipped with him, I dipped into public stock to give them barley, ruddy wine, and fine cattle for slaughter, beef to their heart's content. A dozen days they stayed with me there, those brave Achaeans, penned up by a north wind so stiff that a man, even on dry land, could never keep his feet. Some angry spirit raised that blast, I'd say. Then on the 13th day the wind died down, and they set sail for Troy. Falsehoods all, but he gave his falsehoods all the ring of truth, and she listened on. Her tears flowed and soaked her cheeks as the heavy snow melts down from the high mountain ridges. Snow the west wind piles there, and the warm east wind thaws, and the snow, melting, swells the rivers to overflow their banks. So she dissolved in tears, streaming down her lovely cheeks, weeping for him, her husband, sitting there beside her. Odysseus' heart went out to his grief-stricken wife, but under his lids his eyes remained stock still. They might have been horn or iron, his guile fought back his tears. And she, once she'd had her fill of grief and weeping, turned again to her guest with this reply. Now, stranger, I think I'll test you, just to see if there in your house, with all his friends in arms, you actually entertain my husband as you say. Come, tell me what sort of clothing he wore. What kind of man was he? What of the men who followed in his train? Ah, good woman, Odysseus, the great master of subtlety, returned. How hard it is to speak after so much time apart. Why, some 20 years have passed since he left my house and put my land behind him. Even so, imagine the man as I portray him. I can see him now. King Odysseus, he was wearing a heavy woolen cape, sea purple in double folds, with a golden brooch to clasp it. Twin sheaths for the pins, on the face a work of art. A hound clenching a dappled fawn in its front paws, slashing it as it writhed. All marveled to see it, solid gold as it was, the hound slashing, throttling the fawn in its death throes, hoofs flailing to break free. I noticed his glossy tunic too, clinging to his skin like the thin glistening skin of a dried onion, silky, soft, the glint of the sun itself. Women galore would gaze on it with relish, and this too, bear it in mind, won't you? I've no idea if Odysseus wore these things at home, or a comrade gave him them as he boarded ship, or a host perhaps. The man was loved by many. There were a few Achaeans to equal him, and I gave him a bronze sword myself, lined cloak, elegant, deep red, and a fringed shirt as well. And I saw him off in his long bent ship of war in lordly style. Something else. He kept a herald beside him, a man a little older than himself. I'll try to describe him to you best I can. Round-shouldered he was, swarthy, curly-haired. His name? Eurybides. And Odysseus prized him most of all his men. Their minds worked as one. His words renewed her deep desire to weep, recognizing the strong, clear signs Odysseus offered. But as soon as she'd had her fill of tears and grief, Penelope turned again to her guest and said, Now, stranger, much as I pitied you before, now in my house you'll be my special friend, my honored guest. I am the one myself who gave him the very clothes that you describe. I brought them up from the storeroom, folded them neatly, fastened the golden brooch to adorn my husband. Odysseus, never again will I embrace him, striding home to his own native land. A black day it was when he took ship to see that cursed city. Destroy, I call it. I hate to say its name. Ah, my queen, the man of craft assured her, noble wife of Laertes' son Odysseus, ravage no more your lovely face with tears, or consume your heart with grieving for your husband. Not that I blame you ever. Any woman will mourn the bridegroom she has lost, lain within love, and borne his children too. Even though he was no Odysseus, a man like a god, they say. But dry your tears and take my words to heart. I will tell you the whole truth and hide nothing. I've heard that Odysseus now, at last, is on his way. He's just in rich Thesprotian country. The man is still alive, and he's bringing home a royal hoard of treasure, gifts he won from the people of those parts. His crew? He's lost his crew and hollow ship on the wine-dark waters off Thrinacia Island. Zeus and Helios raged, dead set against Odysseus, for his men-at-arms had killed the cattle of the sun. So down to the last hand they drowned in crashing seas, but not Odysseus. Clinging tight to his ship's keel, the breakers flung him out onto dry land, on Scheria, the land of Phaeacians, close kin to the gods themselves. And with all their hearts they prized him like a god, showered the man with gifts, and they'd have gladly sailed him home unscathed. In fact, Odysseus would have been here beside you long ago, but he thought it the better, shrewder course to recoup his fortunes roving through the world. At sly profit turning, there's not a man alive to touch Odysseus. He's got no rival there. So I learned from Phaedon, king of Thesprotia, who swore to me as he poured libations in his house. The ships hauled down and the shipmates set to sail to take Odysseus home to native land. But he shipped me off before. A Thesprotian cutter chanced to be heading for Delikion rich in wheat, but he showed me all the treasure Odysseus had amassed, enough to last a man and 10 generations of his heirs. So great the wealth stored up for him in the king's vaults. But Odysseus, he made clear, was off at Dodona then, to hear the will of Zeus that rushes forth from the god's tall leafy oak. How should he return? After all the years away to his own beloved Ithaca, openly or in secret. And so the man is safe, as you can see, and he's coming home soon. He's close at hand. He won't be severed long from kin and country. No, not now. I give you my solemn binding oath. I swear by Zeus, the first, the greatest god, by Odysseus' hearth, where I have come for help. All will come to pass, I swear, exactly as I say. True, this very month Just as the old moon dies and the new moon rises into life, Odysseus will return. If only, my friend, reserved Penelope exclaimed, everything you say would come to pass. You'd soon know my affection, know my gifts. Any man you meet would call you blessed. But my heart can sense the way it will all will go. Odysseus, I tell you, is never coming back, nor will you ever gain your passage home. For we have no masters in our house like him, as welcoming in or sending off an honored guest. Odysseus. There was a man, or was he all a dream? But come, women, watch the stranger make his bed, with bedding, blankets, and lustrous spreads to keep him warm, till dawn comes up and takes her golden throne. Then, tomorrow at daybreak, bathe him well and rub him down with oil, so he can sit beside Telemachus in the hall, enjoy his breakfast there. And anyone who offends our guest beyond endurance, he defeats himself. He's loomed to failure here, no matter how raucously he raves and blusters on. For how can you know, my friend, if I surpass all women in thoughtfulness and shrewd good sense, if I'd allow you to take your meals at hall, so weather-beaten, clad in rags and tatters? Our lives are much too brief. If a man is cruel by nature, cruel in action, the mortal world will call down curses on his head while he is alive, and all will mock his memory after death. But then if a man is kind by nature, kind in action, his guests will carry his fame across the earth, and people all will praise him from the heart. Wait, my queen, the crafty man objected. Noble wife of Laertes' son Odysseus, blankets and glossy spreads? They're not my style. Not from the day I launched out in my long-oared ship, and the snowy peaks of Crete went fading far astern. All lies I've done through sleepless nights before. Many a night I've spent on rugged beds afield, waiting for dawn to mount her lovely throne. Nor do I pine for any footbaths either. Of all the women who serve your household here, not one will touch my feet, unless perhaps there is some old retainer, the soul of trust, someone who's borne as much as I have borne. I wouldn't mind if she would touch my feet. Dear friend, the discreet Penelope replied, never has any man so thoughtful of all the guests in my palace come from foreign parts been as welcome as you. So sensible, so apt is every word you say. I have just such an old woman, seasoned, wise, who carefully tended my unlucky husband, reared him, took him into her arms the day his mother bore him. Frail as the woman is, she'll wash your feet. Up with you now. My good old Euryclea, come and wash your master's, equal in years. Odysseus must have feet and hands like his by now. Hardship can age a person overnight. That name, the old retainer buried her face in both hands, burst into warm tears, and wailed out in grief, "O my child, how helpless I am to help you now. How Zeus despised you, more than all other men, God-fearing man that you were. Never did any mortal burn the old thunderer, such rich thigh bones, offerings charred and choice, never as many as you did, praying always to reach a ripe old age and raise a son to glory. Now, you alone he's robbed of your homecoming day. Just so, the women must have mocked my king, far away, when he'd stopped at some fine house, just as all these bitches, stranger, mock you here. And because you shrank from their taunts, their wicked barbs, you will not let them wash you. The work is mine. Charis's daughter, wise Penelope, bids me now, and I am all too glad. I will wash your feet, both for my own dear queen and for myself. Your sorrow wrings my heart. And why? Listen to me closely, mark my words. Many a wayworn guest has landed here, but never, I swear, has one so struck my eyes. Your build, your voice, your feet. You're like Odysseus, to the life. Old woman, wily Odysseus countered. That's what they all say who've seen us both. We bear a striking resemblance to each other, as you have had the wit to say yourself. The old woman took up a burnished basin she used for washing feet and poured in bowls of fresh cold water before she stirred in hot. Odysseus, sitting full in the firelight, suddenly swerved round to the dark, gripped by a quick misgiving. Soon as she touched him, she might spot the scar. The truth would all come out. Bending closer, she started to bathe her master. Then, in a flash, she knew the scar. That old wound made years ago by a boar's white tusk when Odysseus went to Parnassus, out to see Autolycus and his sons. The man was his mother's noble father, one who excelled the world at thievery, that and subtle, shifty oaths. Hermes gave him the gift, overjoyed by the thighs of lambs and kids he burned in God's honor. Hermes the ready partner in his crimes. Now, Autolycus once visited Ithaca's fertile land to find his daughter's son had just been born. Eurycleus set him down on the old man's knees as he finished dinner, urging him, Autolycus, you must find a name for your daughter's darling son. The baby comes as the answer to her prayers. You, my daughter, and you, my son-in-law, Autolycus replied, give the boy the name I tell you now, just as I have come from afar, creating pain for many, men and women across the good green earth. So let his name be Odysseus, the son of pain, a name he'll earn in full. And when he has come of age and pays his visit to Parnassus, the great estate of his mother's line, where all my treasures lie, I will give him enough to cheer his heart, then speed him home to you. And so, in time, Odysseus went to collect the splendid gifts Autolycus and the sons of Autolycus warmed him in with eager handclasps, hearty words of welcome. His mother's mother, Amphithea, hugged the boy and kissed his face and kissed his shining eyes. Autolycus told his well-bred sons to prepare a princely feast. They followed orders gladly, herded an ox inside at once, 5 years old, skinned it and split the carcass into quarters, deftly cut it in pieces, skewered these on spits, roasted all to a turn and served the portions out. So all day long till the sun went down they feasted, consuming equal shares to their heart's content. And when the sun had set and night came on, they turned to bed and took the gift to sleep. As soon as young dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, they all moved out for the hunt, hounds in the lead, Autolycus' son and Prince Odysseus in their ranks. Climbing Parnassus' ridges, thick with timber, they quickly reached the mountain's windy folds, and just as the sun began to strike the plowlands, rising out of the deep, calm flow of the ocean river, the beaters came to a wooded glen. The hounds broke, hot on a trail, and right behind the pack they came. Autolycus' son, Odysseus out in front now, pressing the dogs, brandishing high his spear, with its long shadow waving. Then and there a great boar lay in wait, in a thicket lair so dense that the sodden, gusty winds could never pierce it. Nor could the sun's sharp rays invade its depths, nor a downpour drench it through and through, so dense, so dark, and piled with fallen leaves. Here as the hunters closed in for the kill, crowding the hounds, the tramp of men and dogs came drumming round the boar. He crashed from his lair, his razor back bristling, his eyes flashing fire, and charging up to the hunt he stopped at bay. And Odysseus rushed him first, shaking his long spear in a sturdy hand, wild to strike, but the boar struck faster, lunging in on the slant, a tusk thrusting up over the boy's knee, gouging a deep strip of flesh, but it never hit the bone. Odysseus thrust and struck, stabbing the beast's right shoulder. A glint of bronze, the point ripped clean through, and down in the dust he dropped, grunting out his breath as his life winged away. The son of Autolycus, working over Odysseus, skillfully binding up his open wound, the gallant godlike prince, chanted an old spell that stanched the blood, and quickly bore him home to their father's palace. There, in no time, Autolycus and the sons of Autolycus healed him well, and showering him with splendid gifts, sped Odysseus back to his native land, to Ithaca, a young man filled with joy. His happy parents, his father and noble mother, welcomed him home and asked him of all his exploits, blow by blow. How did he get that wound? He told his tale with style, how the white tusk of a wild boar had gashed his leg, hunting on Parnassus with Autolycus and his sons. That scar, as the old nurse cradled his leg and her hands passed down, she felt it, knew it, suddenly let his foot fall. Down it dropped in the basin, the bronze clanged, tipping over, spilling water across the floor. Joy and torment gripped her heart at once. Tears rushed to her eyes, voice choked in her throat. She reached for Odysseus' chin and whispered quickly, Yes, you are Odysseus. Oh dear boy, I couldn't know you before, not till I touched the body of my king. So she glanced at Penelope, keen to signal her that here was her own dear husband, here and now, but she could not catch the glance. She took no heed. Athena turned her attention elsewhere. But Odysseus, his right hand shot out, clutching the nurse's throat. With his left, he hugged her to himself and muttered, Nurse, you want to kill me? You suckled me yourself at your own breast, and now I'm home, at last. after bearing 20 years of brutal hardship, home on native ground. But now you know, now that a god has flashed it in your mind, quiet. Not a word to anyone in the house, or else, I warn you, and I mean business too, if a god beats down these brazen suitors at my hands, I will not spare you, mild nurse that you are, when I kill the other women in my house. Child, shrewd old Eurycleia protested, what nonsense you let slip through your teeth. You know me, I'm stubborn, never give an inch. I'll keep still as solid rock or iron. One more thing, take it to heart, I tell you. If a god beats down these brazen suitors at your hands, I'll report in full on the women in your house who are disloyal to you, who are guiltless. Nurse, the cool tactician Odysseus said, why bother to count them off? A waste of breath. I'll observe them, judging each one myself. Just be quiet. Keep your tales to yourself. Leave the rest to the gods. Hushed so, the old nurse went padding along the halls to fetch more water. Her basin had all spilled, and once she'd bathed and rubbed him down with the oil, Odysseus drew his chair up near the fire again, trying to keep warm. But he hid his scar beneath his beggar's rags as cautious Penelope resumed their conversation. My friend, I have only one more question for you. Something slight, now the hour draws on for welcome sleep. For those who can yield to sweet repose, that is, heartsick as they are. As for myself, though, some god has sent me pain that knows no bounds. All day long I indulge myself in sighs and tears, and I see to my tasks, direct the household women. When night falls and the world lies lost in sleep, I take to my bed, my heart throbbing, about to break. Anxiety swarming, piercing, I may go mad with grief. Like Pandareus' daughter, the nightingale in the green woods, lifting her lovely song at the first warm rush of spring, perched in the treetops, rustling leaves and pouring forth, her music shifting, trilling and singing, rippling high to burst the grief for Itylus, her beloved boy, King Zethus' son, whom she in innocence once cut down with bronze. So my wavering heart goes shuttling back and forth. Do I stay beside my son and keep all things secure? My lands, my serving women, the grand high-roofed house, true to my husband's bed, the people's voice as well? Or do I follow at last the best man who courts me here in the halls, who gives the greatest gifts? My son, when he was a boy and light-hearted, urged me not to marry and leave my husband's house. But now he has grown and reached his young prime. He begs me to leave our palace, travel home. Telemachus, who, obsessed with his own estate, the wealth my princely suitors bleed away. But please, read this dream for me, won't you? Listen closely. I keep 20 geese in the house. From the water through, but they come and peck their wheat. From the water trough, they come and peck their wheat. I love to watch them all. But down from a mountain swooped this great hook-beaked eagle. Yes, and he snapped their necks and killed them one and all. And they lay in heaps throughout the halls while he, back to the clear blue sky, he soared at once. But I wept and wailed, only a dream, of course. And our well-groomed ladies came and clustered round me, sobbing, stricken. The eagle killed my geese. But down he swooped again, and settling onto a jutting rafter, called out in a human voice that dried my tears. Courage, daughter of famed King Icarius. This is no dream, but a happy waking vision. Real as day. That will come true for you. The geese were your suitors. I was once the eagle, but now I am your husband, back again at last, about to staunch a terrible fate against them all. So we vowed, and the soothing sleep released me. I peered around and saw my geese in the house, pecking at their wheat at the same trough where they always took their meal. Dear woman, quick Odysseus answered, twist it however you like, your dream can only mean one thing. Odysseus told you himself, he'll make it come to pass. Destruction is clear for each and every suitor. Not a soul escapes his death and doom. Ah, my friend, seasoned Penelope dissented, dreams are hard to unravel, wayward, drifting things. Not all we glimpse in them will come to pass. 2 gates there are for our evanescent dreams. One is made of ivory, the other made of horn. Those that pass through the ivory cleanly carved are will-o'-the-wisps. Their message bears no fruit. The dreams that pass through the gates of polished horn are fraught with truth for the dreamer who can see them. But I can't believe my strange dream has come that way, much as my son and I would love to have it so. One more thing I'll tell you, weigh it well. The day that dawns today, this cursed day, will cut me off from Odysseus' house. Now, I mean to announce a contest with those axes, the ones he would often line up here inside the hall, 12 in a straight unbroken row, like blocks to shore a keel. Then stand well back and whip an arrow through the lot. Now I will bring them on as a trial for my suitors. The hand that can string the bow with greatest ease, that shoots an arrow clean through all 12 axes, he's the man I follow, yes, forsaking this house where I was once a bride, this gracious house so filled with the best that life can offer. I shall always remember it, that I know, even in my dreams. O my queen, Odysseus, man of exploits, urged her on, royal wife of Laertes' son, Odysseus, now, don't put off this test in the halls of moments. Before that crew can handle the polished bow, string it taut and shoot through all those axes, Odysseus, man of exploits, will be home with you. If only, my friend, the wise Penelope replied, you were willing to sit beside me in the house, indulging me in the comfort of your presence, sleep would never drift across my eyes. But one can't go without one's sleep forever. The immortals give each thing its proper place in our mortal lives throughout the good green earth. So now I'm going back to my room upstairs and lie down on my bed. That bed of pain my tears have streaked, year in, year out, from the day Odysseus sailed away to sea. Destroy, I call it. I hate to say its name. There I'll rest, while you lie here in the hall, spreading your blankets somewhere on the floor, or the women will prepare a decent bed. With that, the queen went up to her lofty, well-lit room, not alone. Her women followed closely behind. Penelope, once they reached the upper story, fell to weeping for Odysseus, her beloved husband, till watchful Athena sealed her eyes with welcome sleep. Book 20. Portents gather. Off in the entrance hall, the great king made his bed, spreading out on the ground the rawhide of an ox, heaping over it fleece from sheep, the suitors butchered day and night. Then Eurynomy threw a blanket over him, once he'd nestled down. And there Odysseus lay, plotting within himself the suitor's death, awake, alert, as the women slipped from the house, the maids who hoard in the suitors' beds each night, tittering, linking arms and frisking as before. The master's anger rose inside his chest, torn in thought, debating, head and heart. Should he up and rush them, kill them one and all, or let them rut with their lovers one last time? The heart inside him growled low with rage, as a bitch mounting over her weak, defenseless puppies growls, facing a stranger, bristling for a showdown. So he growled from his depths, hackles rising at their outrage, but he struck his chest and curbed his fighting heart. Bear up, old heart. You've borne worse, far worse. That day that when Cyclops, Man Mountain, bolted your hardy comrades down, but you held fast. Nobody but your cunning pulled you through the monster's cave you thought would be your death. So he forced his spirit into submission. The rage in his breast reined back, unswerving, all endurance. But he himself kept tossing, turning, intent as a cook before some white-hot blazing fire, who rolls his sizzling sausage back and forth, packed with fat and blood, keen to broil it quickly, tossing, turning it this way, that way, so he cast about. How could he get these shameless suitors in his clutches, one man facing a mob? When close to his side she came, Athena sweeping down from the sky in a woman's build, and hovering at his head, the goddess spoke. Why still awake, the unluckiest man alive? Here is your house, your wife at home, your son, as fine a boy as one could hope to have. True, the wily fighter replied. How right you are, goddess, but still this worry haunts me heart and soul. How can I get these shameless suitors in my clutches? Single-handed, braving an army always camped inside. There's another worry that haunts me even more. What if I kill them, thanks to you and Zeus? How do I run from under their avengers? Show me the way, I ask you. Impossible, man, Athena bantered, the goddess's eyes ablaze. Others are quick to trust a weaker comrade, some poor mortal, far less cunning than I. But I am a goddess. Look, the very one guards you in all your trials to the last. I tell you this straight out. Even if 50 bands of mortal fighters closed around us, hot to kill us off in battle, still you could drive away their herds in sleek flocks. So surrender to sleep at last. What a misery keeping watch through the night, wide awake. You'll soon come up from under all your troubles. With that, she showered sleep across his eyes, and back to Olympus went the lustrous goddess. As soon as sleep came on him, loosing his limbs, slipping the toils of anguish from his mind, His devoted wife awoke and, sitting up in her soft bed, returned to tears. When the queen had wept to her heart's content, she prayed to the huntress, Artemis. First of all, Artemis, goddess noble daughter of Zeus, if only you'd whip an arrow through my breast and tear my life out, now, at once, or let some whirlwind pluck me up and sweep me away along those murky paths and fling me down where the ocean river running round the world rolls back upon itself. Quick at the whirlwind swept away Pandareus' daughters, years ago, when the gods destroyed their parents, leaving the young girls orphans in their house. But radiant Aphrodite nursed them well, on cheese and luscious honey and heady wine, and Hera gave them beauty and sound good sense. More than all other women, Virgin Artemis made them tall, and Athena honed their skills to fashion lovely work. But then, when Aphrodite approached Olympus's peaks to ask for the girls their crowning day as brides, from Zeus, who loves the lightning, Zeus who knows all that's fated, all not fated for mortal men, then the storm spirits snatched them away and passed them on to the hateful Furies, yes, for all their loving care. Just so, may the gods who rule Olympus blot me out. Artemis, with your glossy braids, come shoot me dead, so I can plunge beneath this loathsome earth, and the image of Odysseus vivid in my mind. Never let me warm the heart of a weaker man. Even grief is bearable, true, when someone weeps through the days, sobbing, heart convulsed with pain, yet embraced by sleep all night, sweet oblivion, sleep dissolving all, the good and the bad, once it seals our eyes. But even my dreams torment me, sent by wicked spirits. Again, just this night, someone lay beside me, like Odysseus to the life, when he embarked with his men at arms. My heart raced with joy. No dream, I thought, the waking truth at last. At those words, dawn rose on her golden throne in a sudden gleam of light, and great Odysseus caught the sound of his wife's cry and began to daydream. Deep in his heart, it seemed, she stood beside him, knew him now at last. Gathering up the fleece and blankets where he'd slept, he laid them on a chair in the hall. He took the ox hide out and spread it down, lifted his hands and prayed to Zeus. Father Zeus, if you really willed it so, to bring me home over land and sea lanes, home to native ground after all the pain you brought me, show me a sign. A good omen voiced by someone awake indoors. Another sign outside from Zeus himself. And Zeus in all his wisdom heard that prayer. He thundered at once, out of his clear blue heavens, high above the clouds, and Odysseus' spirit lifted. Then from within the halls a woman grinding grain let fly a lucky word. Close at hand she was, where the good commanders set the handbills once, and now 12 women and all perform their tasks, grinding the wheat and barley, marrow of men's bones. The rest were abed by now. They'd milled their stint. This one alone, the frailest of all, kept working on. Stopping her mill, she spoke an omen for her master. Zeus, Father, King of gods and men. Now there was a crack of thunder out of the starry sky, and not a cloud in sight. Sure, it's a sign you're showing someone now. So poor as I am, grant me my prayer as well, that this day be the last. The last these suitors bolt their groaning feasts in King Odysseus' house. These brutes who break my knees, heart-wrenching labor, grinding their grain, now let them eat their last. A lucky omen, linked with Zeus's thunder. Odysseus' heart leapt up, the man convinced he'd grind the scoundrels' lives out in revenge. By now, the other maids were gathering in Odysseus' royal palace, raking up on the hearth, the fire still going strong. Telemachus climbed from bed and dressed at once, brisk as a young god. Over his shoulder he slung his well-honed sword. He fastened rawhide sandals under his smooth feet. He seized his tough spear, tipped with a bronze point, and took his stand at the threshold, calling Eurycleia. Dear nurse, how did you treat the stranger in our house? With bed and board, or leave him to lie untended? That would be my mother's way, sensible as she is, all impulse, doting over some worthless stranger, turning a good man out to face the worst. Please, child, his calm old nurse replied. Don't blame her. Your mother's blameless this time. He sat and drank his wine till he'd had his fill. Food? He'd lost his hunger, but she asked him. And when it came time to think of turning in, she told the maids to spread out a decent bed, but he, so down and out, poor soul, so dogged by fate, said no to snuggling into a bed between covers. No, sir. The man lay down in the entrance hall, on the rawhide of an ox and sheep's fleece. Then we threw a blanket over him, so we did. Hearing that, Telemachus strode out through the palace, spear in hand, and a pair of sleek hounds went trotting at his heels. He made for the meeting grounds to join the island lords, while Euryclea, the daughter of Ops, Pisano's son, that best of women, gave the maids their orders. Quick now, look alive, sweep out the house, wet down the floors. You, those purple coverlets, fling them over the fancy chairs. All those tables, sponge them down, scour the wine bowls, burnish cups. The rest, now off you go to the spring and fetch some water, fast as your legs can run. Our young gallants won't be long from the palace. They'll be bright and early. Today's a public feast. They hung on her words and ran to do her bidding. Full 20 scurried off to the spring's dark water, others bent to the housework, all good hands. Then in they trooped, the strutting serving men, who split the firewood cleanly now as the women bustled in from the spring, the swineherd at their heels, driving 3 fat porkers, the best of all his herds. And leaving them to root in the broad courtyard, up he went to Odysseus, hailed him warmly. Friend, do the suitors show you more respect or treat you like the dregs of earth as always? Good, Eumaeus, the crafty man replied. If only the gods would pay back their outrage, wild and reckless young cubs, conniving here in another's house, they've got no sense of shame. And now, as the two confided in each other, the goatherd Melanthius sauntered toward them, herding his goats with a pair of drovers' help, the pick of his flocks to make the suitors' meal. Under the echoing porch he tethered these, then turned on Odysseus once again with cutting insults. Still alive? Still hounding your betters? Begging round the house? Why don't you cut yourself away? Get out. We'll never part, I swear, till we taste each other's fists. Riff-raff, you and your begging make us sick. Get out. We're hardly the only banquet on the island. No reply. The wily one just shook his head, silent, his mind churning with thoughts of bloody work. Third to arrive was Philoetius, that good cowherd, prodding in for the crowd a heifer and fat goats. Boatmen had brought them over from the mainland, crews who ferry across all travelers too, whoever comes for passage. Under the echoing porch he tethered all heads well, and then approached the swineherd full of questions. Who's this stranger, Eumaeus, just come to the house? What roots does the man claim? Who are his people? Where are his bloodkin, his father's fields? Poor beggar. But what a build, a royal king's. Once the gods weave trouble into our lives, they drive us across the earth, they drown us all in pain, even kings of the realm. And with that thought he walked up to Odysseus, gave him his right hand, and winged a greeting. Cheers, old friend, old father. Here's to your luck. Great days from this day on. Saddled now as you are with so much trouble. Father Zeus, no gods more deadly than you. No mercy for men. You give them life yourself, then plunge them into misery, brutal hardship. I broke into sweat, my friend, when I first saw you. See, my eyes still brim with tears, remembering him, Odysseus. He must wear such rags, I know it. Knocking about, drifting through the world, if he's still alive and sees the light of day. If he's dead already, lost in the house of death, my heart aches for Odysseus, my great lord and master. He set me in charge of his herds in Cephallenian country, when I was just a youngster. How they've grown by now, past counting. No mortal on earth could breed a finer stock of oxen, broad in the brow. They thrive like ears of corn. But just look, these interlopers tell me to drive them in for their own private feasts. Not a thought for the young prince in the house. They never flinch. No regard for the gods' wrath, in their mad rush to carve up his goods, my master gone so long. I'm tossed from horn to horn in my own mind. What a traitor I'd be, with the prince still alive, if I'd run off to some other country, herds and all, to a new set of strangers. But isn't it worse to hold out here, tending the herds for upstarts, not their owners, suffering all the pains of hell? I could have fled ages ago to some great king who'd give me shelter. It's unbearable here. True, but I still dream of my old master. Unlucky man, if only he'd drop in from the blue and drive these suitors all in a rout throughout the halls. Cowherd, the cool tactician Odysseus answered. You're no coward, and nobody's fool, I'd say. Even I can see there's sense in that old head. So I tell you this on my solemn binding oath. I swear by Zeus, the first of all the gods, by the table of hospitality waiting for us, by Odysseus' hearth where I have come for help. Odysseus will come home while you're still here. You'll see with your own eyes, if you have the heart, these suitors who lord it here cut down in blood. Stranger, if only, the cowherd cried aloud. If only Zeus could make that oath come true. You'd see my power, my fighting arms in action. Eumaeus echoed his prayer to all the gods that their wise king would soon come home again. Now as they spoke and urged each other on, and once more the suitors were plotting certain doom for the young prince, suddenly, banking high on the left, an omen flew past. An eagle clutching a trembling dove. And Amphinomus rose in haste to warn them all. My friends, we'll never carry off this plot to kill the prince. Let's concentrate on feasting. His timely invitation pleased them all. The suitors ambled into Odysseus' royal house, and flinging down their cloaks on a chair or bench, they butchered hulking sheep and fatted goats, full-grown hogs and a young cow from the herd. They roasted all the innards, served them round, and filled the bowls with wine and mixed it well. Eumaeus passed out cups. Philoetius, trusty herdsman, brought on loaves of bread in ample wicker trays. Melanthius poured the wine. The whole company reached out for the good things that lay at hand. Telemachus, maneuvering shrewdly, sat his father down on the stone threshold just inside the timbered hall, and set a rickety stool and cramped table there. He gave him a share of innards, poured his wine in a golden cup, and added a bracing invitation. Now sit right there, drink your wine with the crowd. I'll defend you from all their taunts and blows, these young bucks. This is no public place. This is Odysseus' house. My father won it for me, so it's mine. You suitors, control yourselves. No insults now, no brawling, no, or it's war between us all. So he declared, and they all bit their lips, amazed the prince could speak with so much daring. Only Eupeithes' son Antinous ventured. Fighting words, but do let's knuckle under to our prince. Such abuse, such naked threats, but clearly Zeus has foiled us. Or long before we would have shut his mouth for him in the halls, fluent and flowing as he is. So he mocked. Telemachus paid no heed. Now through the streets the heralds passed, leading the beasts marked out for sacrifice on Apollo's grand festal day, and the islanders with their long hair were filing into the god's shady grove, the distant deadly archer. Those in the palace, once they'd roasted the prime cuts, pulled them off the spits, and, sharing out the portions, fell to the royal feast. The men who served them gave Odysseus his share, as fair as the helping they received themselves. So Telemachus ordered, the king's own son. But Athena had no mind to let the brazen suitors hold back now from their heart-rending insults. She meant to make the anguish cut still deeper into the core of Laertes' son Odysseus. There was one among them, a lawless boar. Ctesippus was his name. He made his home in Same, a fellow so impressed with his own astounding wealth he courted the wife of Odysseus, gone for years. Now the man harangued his swaggering comrades. Listen to me, my fine friends, here's what I say. From the start our guest has had his fair share. It's only right, you know. How impolite it would be. How wrong to scant whatever guest Telemachus welcomes to his house. Look here. I'll give him a proper gift too. A prize he can hand the crone who bathes his feet, or a tip for another slave who haunts the halls of our great king Odysseus. On that note, grabbing an ox hoof out of a basket where it lay, with a brawny hand he flung it straight at the king. But Odysseus ducked his head a little, dodging the blow, and seething just as the ox hoof hit the solid wall, he clenched his teeth in a wry, sardonic grin. Telemachus dressed Ctesippus down at once. Ctesippus, you can thank your lucky stars you missed our guest. He ducked your blow, by God. Else I would have planted my sharp spear in your bowels. Your father would have been busy with your funeral, not your wedding here. Enough. Don't let me see more offenses in my house, not from anyone. I'm alive to it all now, the good and the bad. The boy you knew is gone, but I still must bear with this lovely sight. Sheep flocks butchered, wine swilled, food squandered. How can a man fight off so many single-handed? But no more of your crimes against me, please, unless you're bent on cutting me down now, and I'd rather die, yes. Better that by far than have to look on at your outrage day by day. Guests treated to blows, men dragging the servant women through our noble house, exploiting them all, no shame. Dead quiet. The suitors all fell silent, hushed. At last, Damastor's son, Agelaus, rose and said, Fair enough, my friends. When a man speaks well, we have no grounds for wrangling, no cause for abuse. Hands off this stranger, or any other servant in King Odysseus' palace. But now a word of friendly advice for Telemachus and his mother. Here's hoping it proves congenial to them both. So long as your heart still kept a spark alive that Odysseus would return that great, deep man, who could blame you? Playing the waiting game at home and holding off the suitors. The better the course, it's true. What if Odysseus had returned, had made it home at last? But now it's clear as day, the man will come no more. So go, Telemachus, sit with your mother, coax her to wed the best man here, the one who offers most, so you can have and hold your father's estate, eating and drinking here your mind at peace, while mother plays the wife in another's house. The young prince, keeping his poise, replied, I swear by Zeus, Agelaus, by all my father suffered, dead, no doubt, or wandering far from Ithaca these days. I don't delay my mother's marriage, not a moment. I press her to wed the man who takes her heart. I'll shower her myself with boundless gifts. But I shrink from driving mother from our house, issuing harsh commands against her will. God forbid it ever comes to that. So he vowed, and Athena set off uncontrollable laughter in the suitors, crazed them out of their minds, mad. Hysterical laughter seemed to break from their jaws of strangers, not their own. And the meat they were eating oozed red with blood. Tears flooded their eyes, hearts possessed by grief. The inspired seer Theoclymenus wailed out in their midst, Poor men, what terror is this that overwhelms you so? Night shrouds your heads, your faces down to your knees. Cries of mourning are bursting into fire, cheeks rivering tears, the walls and handsome crossbeams dripping dank with blood. Ghosts, look, thronging the entrance, thronging the court, go trooping down to the world of death and darkness. The sun is blotted out of the sky, look there. A lethal mist spreads all across the earth. At that, Dale broke into peals of laughter aimed at the seer. Polybus' son Eurymachus rang first and foremost. Our guest just in from abroad, the man is raving. Quick, my boys, hustle him out of the house, into the meeting grounds, the light of day. Everything here, he thinks, is dark as night. Eurymachus, the inspired prophet countered, When I want your escort, I'll ask for it myself. I have eyes and ears and both my feet still, and a head that's fairly sound, nothing to be ashamed of. These will do to take me past those doors. Oh, I can see it now, the disaster closing on you all. There's no escaping it, no way out. Not for a single one of you suitors, wild, reckless fools, plotting outrage here. The halls of Odysseus, great and strong as a god. With that he marched out of the sturdy house and went home to Piraeus, the host who warmed him in. Now all the suitors, trading their snide glances, started heckling Telemachus, made a mockery of his guests. One or another brash young gallant scoffed, Telemachus, no one's more unlucky with his guests. Look what your man dragged in, this mangy tramp scraping for bread and wine, not fit for good hard work, the big bag of bones. A useless dead weight on the land. And then this charlatan up and apes the prophet. Take it from me, you'll be better off by far. Toss your friends in a slave ship. Pack them off to Sicily fast, they'll fetch you one sweet price. So they jeered, but the prince paid no attention, silent, eyes riveted on his father, always waiting the moment he'd lay hands on that outrageous mob. And all the while, Carius' daughter, wise Penelope, had placed her carved chair within earshot at the door, so she could catch each word they uttered in the hall. Laughing rowdily, men prepared their noonday meal, succulent, rich. They'd butchered quite a herd. But as for supper, what could be less enticing than what a goddess and powerful man would spread before them soon? A groaning feast, for they'd been first to plot their vicious crimes.